Welcome, everybody. Okay. Hello. Ready? Welcome, everybody. Good to see you in the room with us today and online. If you're joining us in the virtual pavilion, a warm welcome to our next event, which is Redesigning Economic Systems for Just, Circular, and Nature-Based Cities. Both to you in our audience and as I said, those joining us online, you're both, no matter where you're calling in from or where you're joining us from, in the multi-level action pavilion here at COP26. Your home in the blue zone for cities, towns, and regions across the full 2 weeks of COP. My name is Cale Roberts, and I'm a senior program officer here at ICLE in the US office, and it is a pleasure to be your moderator for this event, joined by my colleague, Karis Hoffman.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Karis Hoffman. I'm a junior officer at the ICLE World Secretariat in Bonn.
Hard to hear, maybe. Oh, you could? Great. Today we'll be hearing from 4 city leaders who will show us how each of their cities is tackling the triple crises of inequality, climate change, and biodiversity depletion. We'll start with opening remarks from Karis, who will kind of set the stage on how the circular development connects to the broader sustainability and equity goals. After these opening remarks, we'll welcome to the stage Councillor David McDonald of Glasgow City Council. Councillor, thank you for welcoming us to your city. And Council Member Kelly Takaya King of Maui County, Hawaii. Also with us today, joining via Zoom, is Vice Mayor Felipe Araujo of Porto, Portugal, who will be connecting remotely, and Mayor Minna Arve of Turku, Finland, who has provided us a video message. Mayor Arve could not be with us today. You all in the audience also have a role to play today. How we'll do our question and answer is immediately following each speaker. So we'll spend 10 minutes, and you can gear up by getting your questions ready as you listen to their portions. If you're calling in online, on the Hop-In platform, you'll see a little box in the lower right that's administered via Slido. So even if you're here in the audience with us, you can go to slido.com and you'll be able to enter your questions there. I'll explain all of that more here in a little bit whenever we get to our panelists. So now let's move on to set the scene. I'll turn it over to Karis, who will give us some background about how these triple crises can find common solutions in the circular economy. Whenever you're ready, Karis, thank you.
Thank you very much. We are actually facing multiple crises. The COVID-19 pandemic has made the already existing social inequalities more apparent. And 2021 has been the year in which the effects of climate change have revealed themselves in all world regions. We must also act urgently to counteract the further loss of biodiversity in our ecosystems. And actually at the root of these crises is the linear take-make-waste model, characterized by an unsustainable use of resources and contributing to environmental degradation, as well as waste management challenges. Each step in the take-make-waste model affects the climate, people, and nature. When we take resources from the planet, our reliance on fossil fuels affects the climate, increases resource insecurity for affected populations, and over-extraction of resources depletes our biodiversity. When we make products, the ecosystems and the climate are affected by pollution from industry. People suffer due to unequal access to resources and products. And lastly, the waste in this system that is produced by the system causes emissions affecting the climate and biodiversity and has adverse health impacts for people. Next up, I will tell you about how the circular economy actually offers a pathway out of this take-make-waste linear model that is the root of these crises. in a just and sustainable way, circular economy actions provide great opportunities to reach local strategic goals such as climate neutrality, regeneration of the urban natural environment, and creation of livelihood opportunities. We know that around half of global emissions are caused by our consumption. Local climate plans need to address consumption-based emissions to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement and climate neutrality. Circular development offers complete pathways to address consumption-based emissions in a systemic manner. Circular development also has the potential to offer social co-benefits, such as supporting equitable access to goods and services, and creating local employment opportunities, which are essential for the COVID-19 recovery. While the focus is often on reducing, reusing, and recovering resources, circular development also is about regenerating ecosystems by favoring the use of renewable resources and minimizing pollution and resource use. Next up, I'll take you through some of the 3 projects that we have together that are addressing this triple crisis. So first off, the ICLEI Circulars platform supports member cities in pursuing their circular development journey by providing access to the latest knowledge on circular economy interventions in cities, towns, and regions around the world, sharing inspiring circular success stories, and providing a repository of practical resources, and facilitating peer-to-peer exchanges. Through the Urban Transitions Alliance, industrial legacy cities across the globe, including 2 of our panelist cities, Glasgow and Torco, have been collaborating to address their environmental and social transition challenges. The cities in the Alliance came together to determine how to mainstream equity-based approaches in their transition projects. They developed the Urban Transition Alliance Equity Framework, which is designed around the 3 pillars of access, participation, and opportunity, so that any city can put just opportunities at the forefront of their climate and environmental interventions. And lastly, the Clever Cities project uses nature-based solutions to address urban challenges. The European cities of Hamburg, London, and Milan are implementing nature-based interventions in several districts as a means to improving public health, social cohesion, citizen security, and increasing economic opportunities in those areas. These are cities from across Europe, South America, and China who meet regularly to share ideas and collaborate. Next, we will focus on Clever Cities and give you a few examples of what these cities are doing in this project. Milan is exploring the potential of using produce from a green roof to sell at a nearby supermarket. And London is using a paid model to engage local residents in the co-creation of nature-based solutions in the Thamesmead neighborhood. Called the Community Design Collective, the project trains 10 residents to read and review design plans, manage projects, budget, and foster community engagement. The city of Hamburg is constructing raised beds and conducting urban gardening activities with tenants of a temporary refugee accommodation in the district of Neugraben-Fischbeck to provide them with practical skills. The power of ICLEI Circulars lies in the possibility to offer a step-by-step journey through circularity, giving local governments a place to start, no matter how far along they are on their circular path. In the network, we already have more than 20 initiatives and projects covering each step of the journey, from advocating for circular solutions, assessing circularity in cities, planning and implementing circularity and engaging stakeholders, as well as scaling good practices. Next up, I'll take you through each step of the journey. In an example of our advocacy, ICLEI has opened a space in the climate negotiations for waste, circularity, and consumption in the Marrakesh Partnership under the Human Settlements Climate Action Pathway. Look out for our event coming up on the 11th November here at COP26. More details will be given on this at the end. Since circular development is a new concept for many local governments, it is not always easy to link it to city functions and goals. Through the Circle Lab for Cities program, we're working with Circular Economy, Metabolic, and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation to create digital tools that can help local governments along different steps of the journey. Together with these organizations, we have recently developed the Circular City Action Framework, which provides cities with 5 strategies for circularity: rethink, regenerate, reduce, reuse, and recover. We are now looking on turning this framework into a digital tool. If you are a city practitioner interested in testing the tool, sign up for the program and be among the first to test it out with us. This is the Circular City Actions Framework that I just mentioned. Next up, this is a good example of the planning stage of the circular journey. The Alliance to End Plastic Waste and ICLEI are working in 2 Indian cities and 3 Southeast and East Asian cities to provide technical support for the development of plans to address plastic waste and get ready to pilot projects that will tackle it. And as part of the session, you will hear from Mayor Arva in Torco how her city is planning for circularity, which is an example for the circular roadmaps. Next up, the implement stage of the journey is when circularity really becomes a reality. For example, the City Practitioners Handbook offers guidance in the transition to circular food systems. It builds on experiences from 50 different local governments and is aligned with the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact's recommended actions. We recently applied this guidance to the food system in Bonn, Germany, and now you can benefit from the recommendations we put together with the city. And over there on the table, you can also find some examples. So we have the Circular City Action Framework there and the Circular Torco Roadmap. So if you're interested to look, please help yourself.
Great, thank you, Karis, for giving us this kind of flyover tour of a few of the great projects that ICLEI is doing in cities all over the world on circularity, especially those that are advancing social equity and nature-based solutions as key outcomes. I'm proud to work with you and as part of a global network of cities, because it really allows us to scale these kinds of solutions. And as Karis pointed out, we're ready to take these projects to the next level, and really a call out to each of you who live in cities, work with cities, to get more involved. Each of those projects will be recruiting additional cities to work with in the next months and years to come. So now we'll turn to our panelists and hear about how some of these projects are working on the ground. I think we'll pull up a slide here that gives you a code to use your slido.com. There we go, slido.com platform, which is how we'll ask each of you to enter your questions. Again, you don't need to wait because we'll do the Q&A after each panelist presents. So go ahead and get your questions lined up in there. If you're following on our hop-in event, the virtual multi-level action pavilion, it'll be in the lower right-hand corner. Great, and that's the code you'll use on the screen. So we'll kick things off here with Councillor McDonald. Again, thank you, Councillor, for having us to your city. Councillor McDonald is serving with the city of Glasgow as particularly the Greater Pollock Ward, located in the southwest of the city. And he has a few other roles as elected Deputy Leader of Glasgow City Council, City Convener for Culture, Vibrancy and International Cooperation, and Chair of Glasgow Life, one of the UK's largest cultural NGOs. He has a background working to empower youth and is responsible for the city's strategic plan priorities aiming to create a more vibrant city, which included, among other things, issuing the bid for Glasgow to be host of COP26. So congratulations, you won. Over to you, Councillor.
Thank you very much. First of all, can I say thank you to ICLEI for hosting this event today, and can I say a very warm welcome to all of you to Glasgow, the most talked about city in the world at the moment. And it's my job as a city leader to make sure that Glasgow retains that status as being one of the world's most talked about cities for all of the right reasons. Now, as you've probably heard at any event that you've been at here in Glasgow over the last few days, this city was one of the pioneers of the Industrial Revolution, the birthplace of the carbon age. And where we sit today was once at the heart of Glasgow's heavy industry. And before this was a conference center or home to media companies and hotels, this site where we are was part of a 20 company long stretch of shipyards, which helped to give Glasgow the nickname of the workshop of the world. And for the remainder of COP, we really need this to be the world's workshop. We all need to be workshopping the ideas and the innovation that's going to help save our planet, but that more than that is going to move us on into a new green age of greater equity and well-being. If we can have the next slide, please. I don't have a click, thank you. So the next revolution that we want in Glasgow is one that delivers a future of less carbon and more fairness. One of the ways that we're doing that in Glasgow is by promoting the city as a world leader in the circular economy. Glasgow, along with Amsterdam, were the first two cities in Europe to go through the 360 degrees circular scan. And we have a huge amount of companies who are now embracing the circular economy because they recognize that it is a way to help us to adjust to the profound social and economic changes that are emerging as we come through the pandemic. And it's helping us to equip our city for the unanticipated world that we now live in. To find out more about our work in Glasgow with the circular economy, please just Google Circular Glasgow, and there you will find out about the excellent partnership that exists between the City Council, the Glasgow Chamber of Commerce, and Zero Waste Scotland, helping us to build that inclusive city economy that is both restorative and regenerative. Next slide, please. So our aim is to make Glasgow one of the most sustainable cities in Europe. And if you know anything about Glasgow's history, you will know how much of a challenge that is. For more than 2 centuries, carbon spewed out of factories and shipyards all across this city. It blackened our buildings, it polluted our water, it poisoned our people, and it harmed our environment. And the end of that heavy industry has left behind a legacy of difficult ground conditions that we have to transform. But rather than be daunted by that challenge, the city is rising to that challenge as one and looking to find all of the connected economic and environmental benefits that we can. From small measures like introducing more pop-up parks or raised growing areas to building new affordable green and passive house homes. We are doing all we can to help heal our environment. The latest figures from 2019 show that we have reduced vacant and derelict land in Glasgow by more than 554 hectares. But we know that we still have more to do, particularly in our most deprived communities, where still too many people experience a complex range of social problems. In our native Gaelic language, Glasgow means the dear green place. So as well as having the most vacant and derelict land of any local authority in Glasgow, we're also amongst the highest proportions of green space anywhere in Scotland. 36% of the urban area of Glasgow is protected open and green space, and that excludes people's own private gardens. Glasgow is home to more than 6,000 species, including a unique and protected and a very much loved species of water vole. But nevertheless, we know that climate change and biodiversity depletion pose a real threat to Glasgow. Recently, the council has been dealing with a major problem with ash dieback disease. Now, Glasgow contains approximately 2 million trees, and about 12.5% of those trees are ash trees. We face the very real possibility over the next year of having to fell 31,500 trees in Glasgow to keep that disease at bay. That means we need to find a similar number of replacement trees if we're able to support Glasgow's unique ecosystem. So with challenges like that, that is why we are trying to focus on an inclusive growth and a green well-being economy. Next slide, please. We want Glasgow to be at the forefront of the just, the circular, and the nature-based transitions, which is why we are promoting Glasgow's Green Deal, a new 9-year plan to transform the city and its economy that combines the city's existing and planned large-scale activity, but that also supplements it with innovation and to deliver our net zero carbon and climate resilient living by 2030 in the most just and equitable way possible. We know that climate risk will have a projected financial impact on Glasgow's regional GDP by about 2.5% annually by 2070. So the Green Deal aims to combat this by accelerating action towards the net zero target, while also helping to create more than 14,500 new additional green jobs in the city. The Green Deal, alongside Glasgow's £30 billion green print for investment, a portfolio of 10 climate investment projects to boost the city's net zero goal, were both launched just prior to COP. Both of these plans will help us to engage with businesses, with citizens, to scale up and accelerate the deployment of solutions that are in line with current climate science. We see this as being a roadmap to the future of more fairness and less carbon. And we've issued a call for ideas to our citizens, to our great global universities, and to the private sector to join us in that fight for the future. Next slide, please. So as many of you might now have been in Glasgow for a few days, you might find yourself starting to acclimatize both to the weather and the local language. And you might have picked up that this is a very much a forward-thinking city, a city that's not afraid to speak its mind, a city that stands up for what is right, and we are a can-do city. And we have a local word that summarizes all of that. The word is gallus. Now, if you ask any Glaswegian for a definition of gallus, you'll probably get several different answers. But if you think that we need to be brave and bold and daring and outspoken and action orientated to tackle the climate challenge, then you are being suitably gallus. And that is the approach that we are encouraging our communities to take as well. And there's so many great examples that we can highlight in Glasgow. The one I want to talk about now, though, is about the Castlemilk wind turbine. The council, together with SSE, one of Scotland's largest electricity suppliers, and the local community, have delivered a new 3 megawatt ton wind turbine in the heart of one of our poorest communities. That project will have an annual community benefit of more than £500,000 for each of the next 25 years for that community, and is directly helping to reduce local levels of fuel poverty. The most recent project to launch under that approach is launched, in fact, just this week, is our new Trees as Infrastructure project, or what we're calling Trees AI. That's a partnership between Glasgow City Council, the Scottish Government, Dark Matter Labs, and with funding support from Google and Morgan Stanley. This is a world first, an innovative project that will be developing an open source platform to map, to value, and to finance urban forests. With Glasgow planning to plant 18 million trees across the city region, this partnership will help us to address the challenge of how the city of Glasgow can cope both with the upfront capital and, more importantly, the ongoing maintenance costs for sustaining trees in the future by addressing barriers related to data, to private funding, to prices for ecosystem support, for processing and skills. Doing all of that will help us to improve the quality of our planting and our maintenance, and help us to sustain trees and to generate real environmental, social, and local circular economic benefits, helping the city's finance through the green transition and to help us reach our climate targets. So that's a very quick tour, final slide, please. And that's a very quick tour along the route that Glasgow is taking. And you can find out more about all of those projects on the various Circular Route Map Glasgow websites. And I am more than happy to follow up with anyone. My email address is here. Please feel free to get in touch if there are anything that you've heard during your time in Glasgow that you want to talk about more. Thank you for joining us here in Glasgow, for taking the time to learn about our ambitious work to support the green recovery that's not just about building back, but about building forward and stronger to tackle all of our challenges, from poverty and inequality, from climate to COVID, in a way that ensures that Glasgow will continue to flourish. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Or
Stay here for questions.
You can stay there, or you can sit, whatever you feel most comfortable. Maybe if our event support can get the Slido code back up on the screen easily to facilitate people asking their questions. In the meantime, I have one for you while people queue up their own. And I was thinking a lot as you began your presentation about the identity of Glasgow in the past as an industrial city. And Karis had walked us through this Urban Transitions Alliance, which is a network of post-industrial legacy cities all over the world, then from the US and Europe and China, coming together to really help each other find these solutions. And I was thinking about, identity. And when we work with those cities, some of them will choose to really step away from this this identity tied to their past as an industrial city, a heart of manufacturing, this kind of thing, while others will continue to embrace that identity. So I wonder which it is for Glasgow, and in what place this kind of dual world, dual identities has in your Green New Deal, and then going forward into the future.
Yeah, so we will always be incredibly proud to have that industrial heritage in Glasgow, and we do as much as we can to sustain it. And while we know it's never going to come back to the kind of levels that it enjoyed right up into the 1960s or 70s, where there was over 300,000 people employed in the shipyards on this site. But what we are trying to do is to find, through just transition processes, the best way to continue to support this city, because this is still a city that makes things, despite what people might say about Glasgow. We've gone from building the world's greatest ships to now being one of the world's greatest builder of spaceships. So Glasgow, after our colleagues in the US, Glasgow is Europe's leading center for space technology. That is a growing area where we're able to take that legacy of and that industrial heritage of being a great city of innovation, but bring it really much into the future to aim, literally aiming for the sky in terms of our ambitions for Glasgow. But what we've seen over too many years in Scotland as a whole has been leaving communities and people behind. And I think the connected strategies that are now taking place in Scotland across all local authorities, but crucially with the support of national government, is that real drive and determination to learn the lessons from the past and to ensure that all of the policies that we put in place are policies that lift the poorest in our communities and those who are often the easiest to forget, that they are the ones that benefit first. That is the real the process that we're trying to take. But in Glasgow, we are keen to work with those fellow industrial cities around the world. We've had a great opportunity to do that over the course of this last week, and I've had some fantastic conversations, and there will be a legacy for industrial cities that come through this, because I think we all know cities are getting tired of saying that ending climate change begins in cities, and it's in cities where the fight for the future is going to be won. So I am a huge advocate for all cities working together, whether they're industrial cities, rural cities, cities that span the entirety of the globe. We need to get all of our cities working together for that common aim.
Great, thank you for that question, Councillor. We do have a few coming in from our audience, so we'll get to those. This one comes from Larry. Thank you, Larry. Councillor, could you explain the call for ideas and generally the role of citizen participation in your circular economy plan and the Green Deal?
Yeah, so we have been, about 4 years ago, we introduced our first ever city charter in Glasgow, and that was about trying to transform the relationship that exists. Glasgow for a long time had a real top-down approach to how we worked with our citizens, but that has transformed over the last 4 years. We are now a complete grassroots, bottom-up city where the voice of people are loudly heard in the corridors of power, probably for the first time in about 80 years in this city. So we have had a citizens assembly on climate that has been meeting regularly, and they've made 15 recommendations, all of which the city are working to implement. We've also in 2019 declared a climate and ecological emergency in Glasgow, and we brought together for the first time all of the civil society, all of the activist organizations, groups like Extinction Rebellion were in the same room as the city leader, working together to try and find the areas where we can work in common. So for example, one of the asks that they have been making of the city is to look at divestment of our pension fund, which is one of the largest in Europe. And that is a process that started with activists, but is now being very much adopted by politicians at the most senior level. And I would expect that we would be making an announcement on that in the next few months. So those kind of opportunities for dialogue and discussion with are taking place on a daily basis with citizens at their heart. And the Glasgow Green New Deal crucially gives anyone who hasn't already been involved in that an opportunity for discussion. The greatest opportunity, I think, though, will come through Glasgow's 3 global universities. We have an amazing amount of world-leading thinkers in Glasgow, and we want to just harness all of that energy now to make sure that the city is doing all that we can to meet our responsibilities. We've got a lot to make up for in Glasgow. We are we are well aware of our history in terms of that industrial powerhouse of the past, and we know the damage that that's cost. So we want to do as much as we can now to make up for the damage of the past.
Thank you for that, Councillor. This next question comes from Natalie. Thank you to Natalie for asking, how do you link the circular and think I'll have to get, okay, we're on it. One moment. Checking now. Nope. What do you mind trying your mic?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Can people hear this? No.
No.
I can shout if it helps. I can speak loudly if you want. Yeah, we'll be here.
That it would be about 1 minute. Thank you for your patience. Nice to get a break.
Hello. We're working. Okay. I think we're good here.
Testing. Yep. All right, we're good. Back to Natalie's question. So Natalie was asking, how do you link the circular and climate agendas with public health issues? And she offers the example of growing healthy food in the expansive green space.
So it is one of the challenges that Glasgow has. And I think in common with a lot of urban areas, the access to fresh and nutritious food is a major issue for us. And we have, as I mentioned in my remarks, we have far too many of our citizens who are in food poverty in this city. So we've been taking action to address that over the last few years. We've joined the Milan Urban Food Pact. We work with the Sustainable Food Cities network, and we have published our first ever food action plan. So part of that involves working directly with communities to give them the skills and the tools, in some cases the literal tools to go out and to cultivate land in their areas, because we've been saying that we need to ensure that we find ways of supplying that food to communities in a way that's sustainable. And what we have learned is that it needs to be communities themselves that take on that role and responsibility, because we've had examples where we've tried to install a city-run growing space, which has just failed because of a lack of involvement from the local community. So we have a number of projects, one called Stall Spaces, which is transforming community pockets of derelict land, where communities can directly come to the city, where they are given budgets from between 10 and £100,000 to kickstart that process. We encourage them to work with local social enterprises, that if they are able to grow food in a sustainable way, that it can support maybe local lunch clubs that offer meals. We're looking at the possibility of creating bio canteens in Glasgow in partnership with other European cities that look at the opportunity of growing food locally, cooking it locally, and then supplying meals into schools or nursing homes or hospitals. So we're trying to take as many different approaches as we possibly can to make sure that we are helping and supporting any Glaswegian who is in need of food, but also recognizing that by transforming that land into growing spaces, we're actually helping to meet our target, our climate target as well.
Great, thank you. I think we have room for maybe one more question. So this one also comes from our audience. I think it's a good one to end on. What other cities, if any, have you taken most inspiration from in your own strategies, and why?
So we have a great relationship with a lot of cities. We have 8 twin cities in particular that we work with really closely. In respect to issues around climate and circular economy, probably cities like Stockholm, places like Amsterdam, where we have a really strong working relationship. But really, we are a city that is internationalist, and we're open to working with any city that we can. We will always look to take that opportunity. So one of the main focuses that I've had during COP is to try and meet as many city colleagues as possible, because Glasgow needs to be part of the international world. We have, for political reasons that probably best aren't getting into here, there has been issues around Brexit, which impacts on Glasgow's ability to work internationally. So we are constantly seeking international partners. So if anyone here knows of a project that you think Glasgow would be a good fit to support, we'd be more than happy to link in with anyone and to be that great international city.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. Another round of applause for the Councillor. We really appreciate your insights there. Up next, we will take a video recorded intervention from Mayor Minna Arve of the city of Turku, Finland. For those of you who may not have had the pleasure to hear from Mayor Arve in the past, she's a real powerhouse in this movement to move cities towards more circularity. She served as the mayor since 2017, but has had various roles in municipal government for many years in and around cities, including as managing director of the Turku Chamber of Commerce. And I really always have felt that her varied roles give her that kind of 360 view that can be critical to whenever you're thinking about systems-wide change. So as mayor, Mayor Arve has really focused on creating an inclusive government, and she is also the global portfolio holder for circular development at ICLE. So now if we're ready, I think we can turn it over to the mayor's words.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Minna Arve, Mayor of Turku. I'm glad to be able to present at the LJMA Pavilion today. Turku is a port city located on the southwest coast of Finland. Turku is the oldest city in the country, and we like to say that it's also the boldest. Through a unanimous decision of the City Council in 2018, the city committed itself to become carbon neutral by 2029, on time for its 800th anniversary, and climate positive afterwards. In practice, this means the greenhouse gas emissions in Turku will be cut by at least 80% compared to the 1990 level, and the city will compensate for any remaining emissions. Becoming climate positive after 2029 is a challenging task for a city like Turku. The city's history is strongly linked to the development of manufacturing and maritime industries, which still constitute the basis of Turku's economy today. Becoming climate positive after 2029 requires transformation and innovations across the various industries and economic sectors in Turku. It requires a redesign of economic systems which is fair and benefits all residents in Turku. Through the Circular Turku project in partnership with ICLE, the city aims to shift away from the linear model of take, make, waste to promote economic systems that respect planetary boundaries. We are working on promoting a more circular economy on both the production and consumption sides. On the production side, Turku works closely with businesses and academia and has become a hub for innovation and clean tech. Advanced circular economy innovations have been developed in Turku, such as technology to identify the type of fibers present in textile waste, or regional energy positive wastewater treatment plant, which recovers nutrients from the wastewater. We now want to go further and create the enabling conditions for the circular economy across a broader range of sectors. We will release the Circular Turku roadmap later this month. The roadmap is the result of collaboration with more than 200 stakeholders across various sectors and levels of governance. The roadmap identifies interventions to enable the circular transition of 5 priority sectors in Turku: food, transport and logistics, buildings and constructions, energy, and water. On the consumption side, we have launched the 1.5-degree Life campaign to inform Turku residents about the lifestyle shifts they can implement in their daily lives that contribute to the target set in the Paris Agreement. We worked with youth groups to design engaging communication materials and focus on the goal benefits of lifestyle shifts for Turku residents. Making sure residents benefit from the transition to a climate-positive Turku is our priority. The Circular Turku roadmap is the first circular economy roadmap to include a social risk assessment for the planned interventions to ensure the Circular Turku transition is fair and inclusive. For each of the 5 priority sectors, Turku and ICLEI worked together to map how the planned interventions could be designed to support equitable access to public services and infrastructure, how they could build on public participation early on in the planning process, and how they could benefit the local workforce and be tied to upskilling programs. Ensuring equitable access, participation, and opportunities for all are the foundation dimensions of social equity identified through the Urban Transitions Alliance, which connects Turku and peer industrial legacy cities committed to inclusive sustainable development. Going forward, we want to connect the Circular Turku roadmap to the city's action program for biodiversity protection and maximize the positive biodiversity impacts of the interventions identified in the roadmap. Through these efforts, we hope to play our role in designing just, circular, and nature-based economic systems. We look forward to learning from other cities and exchanging with peers on lessons learned both at the global level through ICLEI Circulars, the first global platform for circular economy in cities, and at the European level through the European Circular Cities Declaration. Thank you for your attention.
The one not on. Oh. Okay, ready. I've always been intrigued by Turku's 1.5 lifestyles plan and program that really paints a photo or paints a picture of what a 1.5 degree lifestyle looks like for residents. And it requires a huge behavior change, right? And a shift in how society operates, which can be really jarring for people. And from the part of the world I'm from, if a city or any type of government would try to tell you how to change your lifestyle, it might not go over very well. But Mayor Arve led this, led the charge, as she explained, collaborating with youth and really had youth define what the 1.5 degree lifestyle would look like. And so I really encourage you to check out that plan that's really youth and community driven. So we will skip any Q&A with the mayor, who would not be with us, and move to our next live panelist, who I'm super excited to be supporting here at COP26 in our ICLEI US delegation, and that's Councilmember Kelly Takaya King. Councilmember King holds the county council seat for the South Maui area in the US state of Hawaii, where she also leads the Climate Action and Resilience Committee. This year, she was appointed to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency at the federal level to its local government advisory committee. The council member is a vice president of Pacific Biodiesel Technologies, LLC, a pioneering renewable energy company, and one that I learned is the first developer and producer of biodiesel in the United States, which is amazing. And she co-founded that company with her husband in 1995. So council member, please, over to you to share your expertise with us.
Okay, thank you, Kale. Is it on? Okay, we usually start our council meetings, we're doing them all virtually, and we start out by thanking everybody for their patience with our technology glitches. So thank you all for your patience and for hanging out. And thank you for that introduction. I'm so happy to be here. I've been on the board of ICLEI USA for about a year. And so I really wasn't even expecting to come to COP, but when I was asked, I couldn't, I had to be part of the message. So I'm thrilled to be able to speak for our county. The county of Maui operates kind of like your cities. We don't have any cities in the state. We have one city, one incorporated city in the state of Hawaii, and it's Honolulu on Oahu. So our county is actually tri-isle. We have Maui, Molokai, and Lanai, and we operate kind of like a city. We have one county council that does legislation for the entire county, and we have an administrative body that is the actual implementation and enforcer of our policies and our ordinances. But as a tri-isle community, we are on the forefront of sea level rise. So it's hitting home. We're already seeing some devastation from erosion in some of our hotels. And on the west side, you will see a lot of sandbags in some areas trying to shore up some of these hotels that are on the edge. And basically, some of it goes back to poor planning and building too close to the ocean. But most of our high-end homes and our hotels are, of course, along the shoreline and built maybe 30 years ago. So we are looking forward to a future where we're probably going to be losing in the billions of structures and infrastructure and private homes and things that are at some point just not going to be realistic to be lived in or to be saved. So that's, can I get the next slide? Next slide. Okay. For our community in the state of Hawaii, we look back to the history of Hawaii and the system called Ahupua System, which in the ancient Hawaiian days was a ridge to reef system of communities that started at the ocean with the fishing villages and went up a little bit higher to the hunter and gatherers, and then a little bit higher to the farming. Taro was probably the main farming back then, and wetland taro was the predominant type of taro and the mainstay for food in Hawaii, much like rice is a mainstay in Japan. And then you go up to the top and you have the folks who are keepers of the watershed. And the watershed was so important to maintain so that they had the water flowing all the way down, and it would be enough for the farming and for clean water, drinking, and other uses. So that's what the community used to look like. And that's what we kind of go back to learn sustainability modeling from the culture, our host culture, what we call it. Next slide. So I'm really glad we did, Karis did the overview of the circular economy. We have been starting to work on the circular economy since the pandemic hit. And this was Dr. Kamana Beamer started a project, and for over about a year and a half, brought in people from all levels of government, from all sectors of industry and business, and began this input, community input, through across all demographics and financial sectors, the financial levels, to get input on how to grow this economy back after years of relying only on tourism. We had such reliance on tourism that when the economy crashed, when the pandemic hit and we had a full lockdown, we had the highest unemployment rates in the country, in Maui County. So that tells you how dependent we were on tourism. We had no flights coming in and we were crashing. So this project called Growing a Stronger Hawaii started at University of Hawaii with Dr. Beamer. And there you can see that if you want to check it out, the published, the final publication is at www.ainaaloha futures.com. Aina Aloha Futures was the group that he started that's still focusing on the circular economy and how to diversify our economy beyond just tourism. So in that document, there were a lot of suggestions for county governments, the 4 counties across the state, and our state government of policies, laws, and ordinances that we could pass to get to a quicker circular economy. Next slide, please. And it's very important, as I said before, using traditional values to guide our future. This has been sort of a cornerstone of the message, and it's ongoing investments at the county and a state level for recycled and reused water. It's a big issue for us because we constantly have water wars in our state, and it's big ag versus little farmers. And so there are a lot of local people who farm taro who have been struggling to get water back because of the big diversions that big ag did in the earlier years, a few decades ago, where they started diverting the streams and putting the water onto the 70,000 acres or so that they own on Maui. And the farmers who live along these streams are starting to get some of their water back. They've been making a lot of noise. And so along with getting to that water source, whatever water we have needs to be recycled and reused as much as possible and cleaned up, because we have this system right now that many of us are fighting. And if you live in the United States, you might have heard about the Lahaina injection well case. There's a lawsuit from Hawaii Wildlife Fund against the county of Maui for using injection wells to put fresh water back, the water from wastewater treatment facilities, back into the ocean. And it's not a pretty sight when you see where it's bubbling up under the water. I've gone, only time I've ever gone snorkeling to see a dead reef, and you see the water bubbling up. So these are some of the things that we're trying to fix in our community. And many of us who feel obligated to put the money into this are fighting those who feel the obligation to go to court and fight these lawsuits. Environmental protection of the wetlands and watersheds is important. In my district, we used to have over 200 acres of wetland, and now we're down to about 24. So we're in my committee, we're passing out a wetland protection and restoration bill, and hopefully we'll map everything that's left and preserve it, and then start going through some of the other lands that have been privatized and start restoring the ones that are developed, that aren't developed on, so we can get some of that water. The wetlands are our first defense against flooding, and they're very important for certain native birds that are endangered species as well. Of course, we're supporting local businesses, green waste and co-composting and waste reduction. And this has been something that's gone up and down in our community. We used to have, I say 25 years ago when Pacific Biodiesel started, we had one of the most progressive recycling programs in the state. And over the years, with the different administrations that have come and gone, that has dwindled. So we're trying to bring the recycling back. For the last decade, our recycling has consisted of gathering up glass bottles and cardboard and paper and shipping it to China. China doesn't want our garbage anymore. So we're gonna have to figure out a way to be responsible and deal with it ourselves. And we know that. So we're also working on diversifying the economy, and I'll speak more to that with the circular economy issues, preparing for sea level rise, of course, as I mentioned before. And one term that I haven't heard here at ICLEI, managed retreat. So we're starting to go in and see where we have to move buildings further in, where we have to just abandon buildings and take them down, because we don't want abandoned buildings going out into the ocean as sea level rise happens. And making statements. We're not approving anything in the sea level rise inundation zone anymore. So no more new construction. And we're also balancing out how much of the current infrastructure we continue to repair and keep. The creation, the support for agriculture is really important to local economies, especially in rural areas. And we haven't been seeing enough support from our state Department of Agriculture. So just in the last election 2 years ago, we created, we had a referendum that passed unanimously across the county to create a local Department of Agriculture. And we are the first county that's done that, so that we can start getting the training, the expertise, the grant assistance right in our county. And we don't have to go to another island in our state to get that assistance. And then the last thing was just expressing our support for the circular economy as we look at diversifying our economy, focusing on how we create an economy that returns to our people, that keeps revenue local, that keeps the jobs local. Tourism is an extremely extractive industry. And most of the hotels you'll see on Maui are multinational corporations. And so, just talking to the bankers about money comes in, the next day, $10 million goes out. The next day, just watching these hundreds of millions of dollars go out of these bank accounts to the mainland corporate headquarters is actually, it's horrifying if you're a state or county lawmaker, and you know that you're on limited funds and you see so much of the funding leaving the county. Next slide. So in March of this year, Maui County was invited to participate in ICLEI's Circle City pilot project. It was called, it's been called various things. I think we're still trying to land on an official name for this pilot project. But we were supposed to be one of only 5 communities in the United States, but they actually only picked 4. So we're one of 4. And happy to be there. And there's a real, although we're moving in that direction, there's a real need for the expertise that ICLEI brings in, the tools that they bring in for developing baseline data, which we so sorely need because our data is kind of all over the place. And also the technical expertise to walk us through the process of creating that circular economy plan and marrying it with our cultural background, with our citizenry expectations. And I think I'm probably one of the few people in local politics, because I have a business too, where I try to see everything through the lens of the citizenry, like we do with our customers in business. And so the message that we're getting from the populace is they want to be part of this whole economy. They're tired of seeing these multinational corporations coming in, setting up shop and taking money out of our county. So this is part of, this is probably the heart of the circular economy, is to do this, but do it in a way that respects the host culture, that understands the rural development needs. And that's why agriculture is so important. Also, you saw Mayor Arve. We hope to be modeling some of what they've been doing in their community, and that's part of what we'll be getting with this ICLEI association, along with new strategies that hopefully we haven't thought of yet. We're looking forward to that. And I just want to say fantastic support that ICLEI has. Since I've joined that organization, our executive director is one of the best executive directors I've ever worked with, and the staff is just outstanding. So I have so much confidence in how they're going to help us and other communities go forward. And also, because we are an island community, we can build a model that can be translated to other island nations around the globe as well, because that's one thing that I think ICLEI hasn't had before. They've never had a Hawaii representative on that board. And it's important to look at things through the lens of island communities, because we're the ones, the island nations around the world are the ones that get hit first and hardest with climate change. Next slide. So from there, I wanted to personalize this a little bit and go into what we're doing. My husband and I built this company, Pacific Biodiesel, back in the mid-90s, at the point when the internet superhighway was just becoming available, and you could actually get on the internet, on the computer, and you could talk to someone on the other side of the world. And when I talk to young people, I always explain to them, we had no pictures, we had no animation, we had no video back then, but we were so excited just to be able to have words on the screen and be able to communicate with people on the other side of the world or at other parts of our country. So we started researching biodiesel, and biodiesel from used cooking oil had not been developed yet. It was just being researched at the University of Idaho. So when we started into that model to help our landfill, it was really a recycling project. And it was a project to keep the used cooking oil out of the landfill. Eventually we moved into grease trap waste and to try to keep that out of the landfill and utilize the oil that comes out of that. And so what we've developed from 1995 to today is this model of food, fuel, fertilizer, and face. And these are all the things that come out of the model from when we started with used cooking oil. Now we've gotten into agriculture and starting to supply. The one thing, we have a lot of restaurants that are involved in this farm to table, and I'm sure that's all over the globe. The one thing we couldn't get was cooking oil, and that always got shipped in. So now we're growing sunflowers, we're crushing macadamia nuts that are grown locally for healthy local sunflowers, local culinary oils that actually have flavor. We have Western oil and there's no flavor in it because it's been that's been heat processed and chemical processed. And so this is a cold press process that respects the flavor and the nutrient content of these oils. And that's the really strong food portion of this. But I also want to say a point about there was a program that was started by it was a PR campaign in the earlier days of biodiesel that was created by the grocery manufacturers working with the petroleum industry. And they started this food versus fuel campaign to try to scare people out of appreciating the benefits of biofuels, because the story was we're replacing acres with growing biofuel plants that could be food. And in Hawaii, we've been able to get over that PR campaign by just understanding that what we're growing is food and fuel. And this model actually is food then fuel. So we're making this oil, we're selling it to the restaurants, we're getting it back to make into fuel to use on the island. And that was, we were doing that. We were working on this model before the idea of the circular economy was talked about. We were just doing it because it makes sense. It makes sense to keep everything on island as much as possible and not spend money shipping things back and forth. And we've since, with the glycerin byproduct of biodiesel, we've been able to develop that into a fertilizer. We've also started looking at beauty oils from the sunflower and the macadamia nut oil. And by the way, macadamia nut oil is the second best thing that you could put on your skin, only to be surpassed by sea buckthorn berry, which is only found in the Himalayas. So we're very proud of the quality of macadamia nut oil. And so just real quickly, I wanted to show you next slide where we started. And this is the first biodiesel plant in Maui at the Central Maui landfill, where everybody was bringing the used cooking oil back in 1995. And next slide. This is what we were using for feedstock. So your French fries, your fried chicken, all the oils that were being used to fry foods commercially, the restaurants and food processors were paying about $2 a gallon to have it picked up. And we came in, we said, we'll pick it up for free. So to date, we've saved the restaurants on Maui probably upwards of $2 million in fees. Some of the newer restaurants don't even remember. They don't even know that there was a time that you had to pay to have your used cooking oil hauled off. Next slide. So this is where we are today. And this is the biodiesel refinery on the Big Island. It's a state-of-the-art facility. It makes the highest quality biodiesel in the nation. Oops, we went one too far. It's actually distilling the fuel. So there's very little difference when you look at this between biodiesel and diesel, and all of the issues, the performance issues, any little glitches we had went away. So we have this in major utility utilization. We have it in boats. We have it in standby generators, in farm equipment, in vehicle, just any diesel vehicle can run on this fuel. This one is on the island of Hawaii. And next slide. And then just real quickly, so we've transitioned into starting to grow sunflowers for our feedstock, along with utilizing all the waste cooking oil, because we're pretty big good health nuts too. So it was either this or we start encouraging people to eat more donuts and French fries, and that didn't seem like a good idea. So we got into agriculture, and I always say it matters more how you grow, how you do farming than what you farm. So we are in a model right now where we're carbon neutral with our farm, because everything's running on biodiesel. We're not using any pesticides or herbicides. And we're getting to, as we're looking into adding biochar and microbials, that will actually get us to carbon negative farming. The microbials help the soil, and the tractors and equipment can run across them so much easier. They've actually measured that they're saving 30% of the fuel for farming. And then the biochar, of course, will cut down the water even more. We used to grow sugarcane all over the islands, and that took a lot of water. Sunflowers take about 25% of the water that sugarcane took. So last slide is just, thank you very much. This is, of course, thank you in Hawaiian, and I appreciate your attention. I appreciate the ICLEI hosting this panel and getting to share our just burgeoning circular economy with you folks. Mahalo.
Thank you, Councilman. I think we'll have time for maybe one audience question, and maybe Joe on the team can give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. Are we able to take audience questions from people in the audience raising their hand? Yes. Okay. Well, we'll open it up. Anyone out in our live crowd have a pressing question? You can raise your hand and I'll just pass you the mic. Otherwise, we'll take it the online question that came in. Yes, sir.
Aloha. I'd like to know, besides biodiesel, could you give us some other examples of business activities that the county is developing in order to diversify the economy?
Yes, thank you for that question. We of course have several wind farms on the island. We are developing solar farms. There's a big push for on-house solar panels, but we also have several wind farms. One of the issues we're having, solar farms. One of the issues we have with solar farms is that we have, of course, we have to put batteries up, and we have portions of the population that does not want to live near giant solar farm batteries. So we're having to move them further away from housing developments. But we have we're doing a little bit of exploration for geothermal, because there is a potential for geothermal on Maui, but it has not been developed yet. Very expensive to develop that. A little bit of hydro. And so that's where we're at with our renewable energy on the island, on the actual island of Maui. There's also solar exploration going on Lanai and Molokai, which are the two smaller islands that are part of our community.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, council member. Great. Well, you're invited to take a seat. We really appreciate your remarks, and we will take a fly back over to Europe for our last presentation and city case story, where we're joined via online by Vice Mayor Felipe Araujo of Porto, Portugal, where he is city councilor for innovation and environment and is chairman of the board of directors for both Porto, which is the city's energy agency, and Porto Digital Association. He's chair of Eurocities Environment Forum and serves in a long list of advisory positions, as well as offering some serious academic credentials. So Vice Mayor, without any further ado, thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you very much. Big pleasure to be with you. Thank you for the invitation. And congratulations for the topic that you choose. I will start my presentation. I will say greetings also to the other panelists that are joining us. It was very good to see different perspectives about the topic that we are debating. Maybe I can share my presentation. I hope you will see it. Please just
yes, we see it.
Okay, good, very good. Starting the title, as Porto is a city that works inspired by nature. Nature is a very good representation of sustainability, as we all know. It's circular, it's regenerative, it's efficient, diverse, interconnected, locally adapted, resilient, and also, I would say, inspiring. And that's the reason Porto is integrating nature's principles and properties in the design and I would say in the management of the city. And we look to a city that prospers for people at the same time that works within the limits of the planet, let's say. So circularity is one of the basic principles of nature. And today I hope to share a little bit what Porto is doing in this aspect. So just to give you a context, a brief oversight of Porto, we are a medium-sized compact city in the northwest of Portugal, and the second Portuguese economic epicenter, let's say. We are located at the heart of the Porto metropolitan area, and globally we represent 15% of the Portuguese population. But Porto is also a magnet city, so attracts every day doubles the population. It concentrates also a very high proportion of the talent, the knowledge, the research, the development activities, so several universities, the technology hubs also. It has a big industrial heritage. So until the 80s, so the 19th century until the 80s, 1/3 of the population was enrolled in the industry sector, and in the winery, in the textile, in tannery. So there was a lot of industry in the city, and the industrial heritage has left us also the traditional islands where people were living, residential areas, very small houses near the industry. So which are now being renovated by the private sector. So offering this traditional residence to residents also, but also for tourists, for students. We have a poor territory, let's say, in this part of the city. It's called Campanha, and it was highly impacted by this deindustrialization of Porto in the 90s. And but right now it's where we have put all our focus and all our public investment, and also followed by private investment in the cultural, environmental, in the transport, in the innovation, and also it's where nature's cleverness and properties are being highly potential. So, for example, we have this slaughterhouse that was more than 100 years old that is now being rebuilt by a private sector, focus on cultural, on social, and also on new economic businesses, but also different projects that work with the community on using nature-based solutions, or, for example, a new intermodal terminal for all our transport. So there is a lot going on Porto related with this kind of topics. So I would say that, the response to the local challenges and the demand for transformation into a more resilient, just and livable city has been a long learning process until the present moment. So we have the ambition, of course, as we have seen other cities, of carbon neutrality and all the adaptation to climate change, the resilience and self-sufficiency, if we can go that way, and also closing as much loops as we can. So Porto has been enrolled in several strategies and projects. Some of them you can see represented here in this path. I would focus, for example, on the climate change adaptation plan with more than 52 measures that are being in place and being done right now. For example, in the water, which is very important to the urban water cycle integrated management, that we follow this concept of managing all the water and taking a part of it in the reusing water and many other projects. And also, I would say that where we see some people waving is a lot of the projects we have been put, the effort on the public participation for the citizens, but also for a lot of the other stakeholders, organizations, in order to cope with the challenge that we have. So we have, for example, our 1 square kilometer that is our knowledge center, let's say, where all the universities, where the R&D centers are, and where we have been applying, for example, nature-based solutions projects like this project that is a central park acting as a sponge city, but also as a climate adaptation, which is made to cope with a lot of water when there is storms in Porto. So I would also like to focus on all the work that we have been doing on circular economy. So we are working on reducing and preventing waste, also on extending the life cycle of products, and increase all the positive synergies. For example, we have, to give some examples to be more concrete on circular construction, we have, for example, a project that is the Building Materials Bank. It was created a long time ago. And the goal is to keep the constructive elements which give the character to the Porto architecture, such the ceramics, the iron balconies, the plaster decoration, among many others. And so all these materials are collected in buildings that are subject to change or degradation, and they are kept and they are provided free of charge to citizens who are restoring the traditional buildings within the city. So we have a lot that we have been doing on this matter. But we have many other projects on reuse. For example, the school book bank, where we have all the books donated and we can give them back to people that need to use them. On repairability, so the first Fab Lab was born in Porto, and we are, for example, lots of projects, for example, repairing computers to extend their life cycle and reusing or donating them, but also on symbiosis. So Porto tries to establish the links between the offer and demand of many industrial byproducts. One other issue that we are currently working is, so this is like a picture for Porto to understand how the materials bank, or why it's so important, the materials bank for Porto. But we are also focusing on the food system, which is also in the center of Porto's effort, let's say. And in 2018, with support of Ellen MacArthur Foundation, we draw a state-of-the-art that was conducted in Porto, and several ambitions were drawn at that time to source the food grown regeneratively and locally, so to understand how the food was grown, to make the most out of the food, so use byproducts more effectively to prevent waste and avoid food waste, and to design also and market healthier food. So Porto works with a lot of stakeholders on a lot of strategic areas, from food production also to food valorization. So you can see here that we stimulate local and regenerative production by, for example, using our network of organic gardens. So we have a lot of acres that have organic gardens for people to have their own products. We also work on expanding the selective food waste collection. So right now, until the end of this year, maybe the beginning of next year, 60% of the city will be covered with organic collection, which is a huge project that we have been quite successfully in expanding to the city. We have also so for example, here you can see all the municipal urban vegetable gardens that people do their own agriculture. All the markets that we also support, but also the new organic method, which is spread over the whole city. But we are also working on the other side, which is working on preventing food waste. For example, with the Wrap It Up project that is done specifically to reduce the leftovers for meals in the restaurants, or also raising the awareness on people, using a lot of collaboration and trying to have all the stakeholders, especially the citizens, involved, but also, for example, asking the entrepreneurs, the people with ideas, and promoting the innovation in order to work on these problems and on the solutions for the food sector. So there is a lot going on, and I hope this is just a few pictures of what we have been doing, and this is the Food Loop, that is the entrepreneur contest that we are just launching right now. So I hope that I didn't take too much time, but to explain a little bit what Porto is doing on this sector, and a lot related with the circular economy projects and the circular economy strategy that we have, that is called Circular Porto 2030. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. That was perfect timing. To keep within our time limits, we'll have a single question from the audience. We did have one come in while you were speaking, and Deepajana is asking, how did you achieve the 22 square meters per person of green area in Porto, given that your population density is so high and even doubles during the daytime?
Well, the 22 is on the population that lives. It's the result with the population that lives in Porto, not the double of amount that we have every day. So it's how it's calculated in every city. So it's related with the inhabitants and not the population that works in the cities. But we have been we have been doing a lot of effort in trying to get all the areas that we made available from the private, private owned, let's say, but also from the public owned, where we have been conducting an expansion on all the parks that we have in the city, and the new master plan that we have currently in place for 2030, we hope even to go higher, up to 28 square meters per inhabitant. So it's very important to keep developing all the green areas that we have. And besides that, we have around 65,000 trees in the city, and we keep expanding that, not only in the city, inside the 42 square kilometers, where we have a project that is called urban forests, so native urban forest, and we have been growing our own trees up to 75,000 that we have grown so far in our nursery, in our tree nursery. But we have been planting them not only in the Porto, but also in the surrounding areas, in the hills that surround Porto, because well, the air doesn't have any border, so it's common to all of us.
Great, thank you, Vice Mayor, once again. And I'll ask my audience to help me in thanking all of our panelists today from 4 different communities, offering some very inspiring examples of circular initiatives that address social equity and nature-based solutions. So a round of applause here for our panelists. To close out this session, I'll turn back to Karis, who has one final announcement, and then we will break.
A big thank you from me as well, from all of our speakers. It was really inspiring to hear what you're doing to implement the just and circular transition. So first off, if we can share the slides, next Thursday on the 11th of November, there'll be another Point to Connect where we're co-organizing the Marrakesh Partnership Human Settlements Pathway event, which is called Cities, Regions, and the Built Environment, Building Places for People to Thrive in a Zero Carbon Resilient Future. Join us at the Action Room 1 in the SSE Hydro, which is also in the Blue Zone. And we will be having our ICLE leaders, Mayor Minna Arva, who is speaking today as well, of Turku, Finland, joining, and Mayor Peduto of Pittsburgh, the US, will also be speaking. We're also organizing an informal mayor's meeting during COP. So if you would like to connect with ICLE cities who are leading on circular development, you can let us know, actually get into contact with me. I think my email should be in the slide. Yes, thank you very much. So reach out to me and we can make this happen. And lastly, we have the links of all of our projects listed here. So you can visit Circulars, Urban Transitions, and Clever Cities for all 3 projects. And if you would like to get in touch with our team email address is circulardevelopment@icle.org. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a very great session, and I wish you a great rest of the COP as well. Thank you.